So there is a new scheme which is going on, and the scheme is that there is a new dress made up of a completely new material which is available in the divine market, and this is one of the outlet stores. JP Nagar is another outlet store. A number of outlet stores, and this scheme, the material is in abundance, but it's a limited time offer. That limited time could be 100 years, 200 years, we don't know. It's a limited time offer, but material is in abundance. And there is a requirement for this new scheme, and the requirement is that all that is required is to give your old, worn out dress, then the new dress which is there available is given to us. But we are very attached to this old dress, like Karna to his kavach and kundal. Very difficult to part with it. We think this dress is something very. Sri Aurobindo has used this word about line in Savitri about human virtues. He says our human virtue, a coarse spun, ill-fitting robe. Now this is about virtue. We are not talking of the other dresses which are obviously. So all these dresses, at another place he has said wooden apparels. So material which is so hard, tough. So this is the dress our souls have worn for ages, not just centuries. And in the course of the sojourn of many lives, this is something very beautiful, and I want that we all should always remember something among the many unique things about Sanatan Dharma. One of them that we have not Zindagi na milegi dobara, but we have many lives. It changes the entire perspective. Of course, sometimes it can lead to too much laziness, but more often than not, it puts things on an evolutionary perspective, which is something which Sri Aurobindo brings to the forefront, something which we often miss out, and therefore often misjudge things. Just today I had, now after the train accident and all this, people ask questions. So one of them was that why has the divine made things the way they are? Now you see, if we believe that things are fixed forever, then this question is valid. Why did you make things the way they are? But the moment we say that things, we are all products in the making, nothing is finished, then it makes sense, we can understand it, that they are incidents in the drama of his varied plot. And as Sri Aurobindo says towards the end, wait for the last act of the epic of creation. So its last act has started. We don't know how many scenes there would be. So the moment we understand this key, one of the key words that Sri Aurobindo has brought to us is evolution. Now it immediately makes us look forward. And one of the things which is again very beautiful among many other things, as I say, these are the background. One of them is that there is an evolutionary idea in Sanatan Dharma. Very often people say that, I know this is not a talk on Sanatan Dharma, but Sanatan Dharma is the base and it comes everywhere. So, see, when we have this idea, very often people ask, that we don't have one book, we don't have one guide. What kind of a thing it is? Now we don't understand that it is so beautiful. We don't only have many guides and many books. We have an evolutionary idea of things. So the whole progression of avatars, when we look at it very keenly, when we see Narsingh Avatar and Parshuram, wonderful. But today there are very few places where he is worshipped. There are some movies made on Parshuram and very powerful movies, but very few places. Then comes Ram, then comes Krishna, and each one, the same fundamental truth, he brings something new in the manifestation. So things are moving ahead, evolving. So in Sanatan Dharma, while the background and support is what was, our face is turned toward the future and not backward. We don't look back 1,000 years or 2,000 years behind and say, there was once upon a time. We say, there was, there is, and there will be, and what is going to be will be even more beautiful because it's there in built within the whole teachings. So what really is happening, one of the things which perplexes us, all of us, is what is happening here upon earth. And in one way, to use a modern terminology, I like to put it this way, that if we want to know which is the most happening place, in young age people are, go to downtown, it's the most happening place. Upscale, most happening place. So this earth is the most happening place. And what is happening here is something so tremendous, so beautiful, so the greatest adventures, as Mother and Shubindu put it. And what is happening is, as we all know, but we often feel very morose about it, is change. Because change is fundamental to earth existence, there is always, side by side, walking with us, the unexpected. And this unexpected fills us with insecurity. Why? Because we want things to remain just as they are. But when we understand that the unexpected is the joy and beauty of this creation, the unexpected opens the doors to progress. That's why our conception of death is not end, but it opens the doors to new progress. So unexpected, change, all these things, even insecurity for that matter, all insecurities are there to remind us that, look, whatever we felt secure about actually is not the real ground. Let's search still deeper for that ground of being where security is inherent. So when we start looking at life like that, this great, wonderful journey, movement, always forward moving creation, which is how Swami Vivekananda spoke in the Chicago address. And we can see it very beautifully when we go to Pondicherry and see the sea. Among the many lessons one learns, one of them is, in the sea the wave rises up and then the wave comes crashing down. Then it rises up and comes crashing down, right? But there is something which is happening through this rise and fall. It is always moving forward. Through the rise and through the fall, through the rise and through the fall. It is impelled by something intrinsic within it. It is compelled by the winds, by the sun and everything. Through the rise and the fall. It is true of a life, individual life. It is true of civilizations. It is true of all that has happened in the past. They are steps towards a still greater future. So when we spoke about this, when this subject which came spontaneously, the four doors, what I had in mind was the chapter of the Life Divine, where Shubindu speaks about spiritual evolution. This is the most happening thing. So whether individual life or collective life, life of a nation, they run on two parallel streams. So we have in our hand, palmists will tell us two lifelines. So if the outer lifeline is not very strong, they say, but andar wala acha hai. That's called Mangal Rekha. This is good, strong, so it doesn't matter, it'll take care of the outer. So our life runs on these two parallel streams, the outer, where we have the rise and the fall and this and that, 100 events. And when we are focused on it, we go tumbling after. Jack and Jill went up the hill and came down tumbling. So this is how it happens. But when we connect with the inner thread, then we see through all this, it is moving forward. And then life grows beautiful, meaningful, purposeful. So when we look at the past evolution, because normally when we are taught, and this is something which I wish now, history is taught to us in a slightly different way. Because still the story of kings, okay, not these kings, another kings. But what is happening behind all these clash and clasp of civilizations? You see, there is something else. Especially in India, always we will see an undercurrent of spiritual life. Never an age, something for which we need to be 10,000 times grateful and proud, legitimately, that we belong to a nation where always there has been a undercurrent of spiritual life. It's something which we miss. It's like anywhere in the world one may go, one would miss that because it's something so powerful, so beautiful, so rejuvenating, nourishing. And this undercurrent has taken several forms. Time to time, this undercurrent emerges up in the life of an individual, in the life of a group life. And these emergences from within are an effort to create something. Nature is trying to create something. And what is she trying to create? She has to obey the will of her Lord, the Ishvara. All is happening between Ishvara and Shakti, and Purusha and Prakriti. We are caught in the play. If we identify with Prakriti, we are carried. But still, she is also ultimately carrying us toward that. And if you take the stance toward the Purusha, then it's, please, no gender biases. Purusha and Prakriti are in everyone. Ishvara and Shakti are in everyone. But that's how the play is going on. So time to time, this inner thing emerges. And this inner current, which suddenly throws up, sometimes like a giant tsunami in our life, are those focal points which mark the history of spiritual evolution. They are efforts at spiritual evolution. And why spiritual evolution? Why particularly focus upon it? We'll speak about what spiritual is. That word has now so many meanings, like every word, like dharma, equal to religion. So when we go back to the root words, that's why Sanskrit words are so significant. So spiritual, adhyatmic, so it's like Atma is the self and Adi, that which exceeds. So always we are trying to exceed the sense of the self, trying to discover something greater, higher, deeper, more meaningful, more purposeful. So time to time these currents come up. In the Vedas, there is a very beautiful description that there is the world of the Diti surrounded by Aditi all around. So it's very interesting. So what is this Diti, or this inferior nature born in division? What is she doing? She is building our mind, life, body. That's her work. And what is Aditi doing? She is infiltrating it with seedings of the soul. Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta. So all of us has something which belongs to Diti. And all of us have something which is the eternal portion of the Divine Mother, Aditi, the undivided consciousness. And the moment we discover it, life begins to change, because it's the same difference between finite, limited life and an infinite, limitless life. In every way, we can expand it into every horizon. So, this undercurrent, which is behind, tends to surface like the Patal Ganga. Or if you go to Bodh Gaya, I don't know, there is this Pinddan, Mahapinddan, if you have to do it. So it's very interesting that there is the undercurrent of the Ganges. You don't see it, but you have to accept it by trust that it is there. And when you do the offering, why? That whole story is very interesting. I am resisting the temptation, because Vishnu's feet is there. There is a temple dedicated where Vishnu has put his feet. India is an amazing land, magical to say the least. So you go there, and when you do, it is believed that this mighty river which is below is the one which receives it and takes care of the rest. But this mighty river, like the lost Saraswati, that's why the story of Saraswati is so interesting. So, at one level, we can say Saraswati was the mighty river which got lost, and we can look at it geographically. But mystically, it is something very interesting. Saraswati, we have Ganga and Yamuna, the calm, peaceful, though sometimes when Mandakini becomes Tivragamini, then things are upset. And the Yamuna, two currents of nature. But the balancing Saraswati is hidden inside. Time to time she emerges. And it's only when we discover her that there is the meeting of these three. That's where we have the Prayag, where immortality is found. All these stories are so symbolic. We don't have to go all the way to take a dip in the junction. There also you don't see Saraswati. It's a mystic symbol. It's a mystic story. It's a tantric truth of the three currents which run through us. So this eruption, emergence time to time leads to openings toward this greater, higher consciousness which is always there. But we don't see it. So these currents have taken 4 characteristic forms. I'll come to individual life later, but in collective life, they have taken 4 characteristic forms through which man has moved toward the great consummation. First form, or rather all the 4 that Sri Aurobindo speaks about, he speaks about philosophy. So philosophy is an effort of the mind to try to capture in a web of thoughts that which is beyond thought. A very beautiful poem of Sri Aurobindo, Thought the Paraclet. Paraclet is a bird. So it comes here, goes there. But just like when you have to go to Kedarnath, now all of that has become motorable road. So it's wonderful. But part of the fun is lost. Like, when we used to go earlier for darshan into the ashram and wait for 4 hours, it was great joy. I don't know, at least I used to feel. 3 hours you're waiting, Now it is like you take a token and walk in. Theek hai. It saves time. But the joy of waiting, I think many of us have experienced that joy of waiting. So thought stretches. So it was like you can go up to a point after which you have to leave your horse carriage or the kandi and you walk. Leave your feet, footwear, leave your headgear and go there. And then you are ready for the vision of Shiva. So it's such a beautiful symbol that thought stretching towards what that is. But invariably, even in everyday life, thought misses something. And it's not very difficult to understand. Those of us who believe that philosophy, look at it like supposing we have heard about Manas Sarovar and Kailash and the combination. So we can watch a film over it. No, we can hear talks about it. Oh, wonderful. Let's plan it one day. Then people have a very good way of delaying the whole process. जब शिव जी का बुलावा आएगा, अरे picture दिखा दिया. You have been shown the movie. Somebody is spoken to you. Now what you are waiting? Ticket आ जाएगा. Even if that ticket comes, he'll say, no, he has to come personally and take me along. Come on. That's anyways, so this how. So we have heard everything about Manas Sarovar and Mount Kailash. We have read all about it. We have watched a movie and everything. And we are thinking what it will be when we go there. And recently there was a nice movie, not on Manas Sarovar, but Uchai. I think some of us may have seen it. I'm not doing any promos and nobody is paying me for these advertisements. But it's a movie which is very interesting. So when you actually go there, it's an aha experience. Your words cannot capture it. Words are stunned into silence. And you realize the limitation of all the words, all that you have heard, all that has been spoken, all that has been read, appears sweet nothing. And all that you could later on speak about it and write about it appears sweet nothing. Because that one moment, that one glimpse, that's what they show in the movie, Amitabh is sort of going through a kind of demented state and, then suddenly when he stands and he loses the entire... So thought, spiritual philosophy has been an effort. Now why this is important? Because we often mistake that spiritual philosophy is equivalent to spirituality. We may read all the books on Vedanta, and yet we know nothing about the eternal at all. It doesn't mean we should not read. As I said, one starts with reading, one starts by hearing about somewhere, somebody tells about Mansarovar. We get engaged, but nothing unless we undertake the journey. So spiritual philosophy is when the mind has tried to understand what is behind creation. Beyond creation, is there an origin? Is there a source? And it has had this glimpse, that glimpse, somewhere or the other, our mind has conceptualized, and there are volumes and volumes for that one experience, one glimpse. So spiritual philosophy has been one of the efforts, doors. So when they use the word, it's doors, it's an effort through which a door opens. But when the door opens, when one day we close the book and say, I want the original author. And we pick the pilgrim staff of faith and the torch of aspiration, and come what may. But it has done its work. Wonderful work. So spiritual philosophy is an effort of the mind to seek that which exceeds, about which it is said, Yasmin vigyate vigyati sarvam. It also says that not only knowing which all else is known, but he says, if you have the thought of it, you know it not. Because that last step, it goes beyond all that has been read or heard. It's so wonderful. What is the other road? The other road or door, the other door in spiritual evolution is religion. Now this is a door from the mind, and there is a door from the heart. Religion doesn't care about what you conceptualize about God. It doesn't talk about Vedanta or Advaita or Dvaita or Dvaita Dvaita or Visishta Dvaita or Bheda Bheda doctrine. It says, I love because I sense something, that presence. And initially, like we capture the divine in philosophy through a net of words and books and scriptures, which at some point we have to exceed. That's why the Gita and Sri Aurobindo both say, Shabd Brahmati Vartate. Don't become a slave to the thoughts, because what is going to become transcends it. Similarly, religion tries to capture that ineffable presence. For it, it is not just a truth, abstraction, but a being, intimate, unnameable, but it tries to capture in name and form. It becomes so easy. And then, with name and forms, it tries to relate with that which has no name, no form, and can assume all names and all forms. But it tries to go through that process, through that door. And it's wonderful because it opens the door of the heart. But again, just like philosophy, if the heart is just too satisfied with only what is called as the Bahya Puja, then we miss the point. We miss the point because the master has to be discovered within. And no amount of his description, all the names, Aditya Sahasranam, Aditya Hridayam, and Vishnu Sahasranam, Lalita Sahasranam, none of them can capture. All names, you see that grand vision on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Vishwarup. What name can really capture him? It, her, or whatever that, because there is no name which suits, and yet someone with whom we can relate, connect. The beauty of religion is that it has taught man that you can connect with that presence. It's not just an abstraction. The problem of thought is it leads to an abstraction. There is an impersonal, vast Brahman. But religion teaches us that impersonal is also personal and supra-personal, and you can connect with him, relate with him. So this is something so beautiful, religion. But again, if we stop with a name and form the way it has been, if we do not universalize the conception of the deity, as Sri Aurobindo says in the Synthesis of Yoga, then we again stop our spiritual evolution. That which came to lead us itself becomes a stumbling block. Just like philosophy can become a stumbling block if we start reading and talking and discussing and debating, then it becomes a stumbling block. Same with religion. If we remain shut in formulas, and sometimes Savitri has a lot of humor in it. So there is one of the places where he talks about this, and he says, this about, at the mental level, how to the universal in a chapel prayed, whose doors were shut to the universe. To the universal in a chapel prayed, whose doors were shut to the universe. And in creeds and cults we tie him. He loves to escape. Old naughty Krishna. Nobody can tie him. If he ties only by his own choice. Bhaya Pragat Kripala, Dina Deyala, Kaushalya. Then says, you show me that other form, huh? What is that? Tajirupa. Come back to the child form. And he takes the child form out of his own will. Otherwise you can't. So he has assumed all this. It's wonderful. But the moment we take that, now this is a very tricky thing. Is it that we are talking of go beyond the form to the formless? No. That being, because formless, again, it seems that there is no being. No, the formless is a being because it's self-conscious. He's conscious of himself, therefore he's a being. And he has assumed many forms. There comes a little tricky thing here. Then what about fidelity to a form? Nalnida answers it so beautifully. And Tulsidas, in a very nice way, he has answered. He was told that, Krishna, bow down. He can bow before Rama. So he says, looking at Krishna, he says, Kaha kahun chhabi aapki, bhale birajo nath. You are wonderful, beautiful, maduram maduram. Kaha kahun chhabi aapki, bhale birajo nath, tulsi mastak tab nave, dhanush baan lo haath. I would bow to you, but what can I do? I know you are the same, but please, if you take the bow and arrow, I'll bow down instantly. So same thing we see that, so each form, each name is for, it comes with a certain purpose. So we should not become like that, chaotic, confused, liberal spirituality, which it doesn't matter. Like all gurus are the same, Shubinda says. All gurus are the same and they come from one source, is one side of the truth. The other side is that each is an angle through which you are approaching. So how to reconcile fidelity to the path and universalization? Each one will have his own form and name, or maybe formless, doesn't matter. Each will have his own journey and path. And that's why, because Sanatana Dharma recognized it, there was no idea of conversion. Conversion had to be within. As I was sharing this story of mine when I came here, and nobody told me that, bow down before mother. I say, rebelling, 23-year-old, revolting, post-adolescent. I would have said, you want me to bow down? Probably I would have had a nice discussion and told, no. It doesn't work like that. When the time comes, the divine reveals. And he has his own way of revealing through a particular name and form. That becomes for us. But there also, we must universalize it everywhere. To that extent, look at Sri Aurobindo's, what is the starting point of the yoga? Where he is in that Uttarpada speech, he mentions about the Alipur jail, where he sees the divine even in forms that are misused body and darkened minds. And he says, there too I saw Vasudeva. Not only he saw, he says, these are the people I am going to uplift. So, you have been with, he's speaking about India. So always when people feel unsure about India, I said, kitna reassurance chahiye? Shri Krishna reassured in 1908. Sri Aurobindo has reassured us. What more we want? Mother said, I have taken the destiny of India in my hands. When the Shakti says so, shifts herself. Come what may, this is something which is written in the book of the gods. Nothing can thwart it. Even human stupidity cannot thwart it. So that's of course a different subject. So religion is another door, beautiful door through which the heart opened towards the divine. That's spiritual evolution. But again, like all things, it got shut into formulas, rituals, and worse still, this is still okay, in exclusivity. That became the bane of religion. Religions we speak about exclusivity. Supposing we say only Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that is the only door, or we start, telling people even that is the highest door, then I am turning it into religion. Let the divine decide. For me, yes, they are not only highest, they are the only door. But this cannot be, this is not something to be told. They have to pick up. So janahi jin Ram janahi. He will reveal when the time comes. And that becomes the door. That's when this applies. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Par Brahma, Tasmai Sri Guruve Nama. So this is the second door through which spiritual evolution has taken place. And the third door, occultism. So occultism is the effort of life to understand, master the forces. And much of what today goes on in the name of rituals and dances, in India we all had temple dances. All these are actually occult practices. You see, when ever see a person dancing, moving, and you will see that he is playing with energy. Like in Tai Chi, you see people doing this and that. But in India, this art was perfected. And through dances, you draw certain energies of a harmonious order, and you are actually invoking the being. It is a ritual worship, it's not a dance. It's very, we have forgotten that art, so now it is a performance, word still. Performance. It's never a performance. That's why they were called temple. Most of these dances were temple dances. So they were occult rituals. Most of the dance forms are occult rituals. And from there came these rituals. Now even these rituals, when we see, every ritual, it's a kind of occultism in everyday life. In India it is inbuilt. So when you do this aarti, doing like this, why don't you simply show him the light and it is because the fullness, it's not just about the face, the fullness. I adore you in all things and everywhere. I invoke you, your presence. So these circles always represent fullness. So this fullness, and then when they are taken, you also are supposed to do the same thing. And he will also do like this and put it like this, and these are all occult practices. With the hands, you will see in olden time people used to come, they used to do this. Of course, we now laugh at it, jhadfuk. Well, we got all right, nevertheless. Doctors have forgotten. If they would bring this ritual, occult rituals will be so much better. But they will be labeled as mad if they say, take this pill and hand over. Put it before God. Pray to Him. Heal me. Then after some time they will say, doctor, I think you need to see a psychiatrist. Everything is okay. But it is so true. Many of these things were ritual. Even things like, don't speak, you are too happy. Don't share your happiness so readily with everybody. Why? Because when you speak, there are forces which attack it. It is something you learn with lot of experience. There is a very interesting form of goddess Bagalamukhi, and there is Dash Mahavidya, one of the goddess. What does she do? She restrains the speech. I used to wonder why she would restrain the speech. Normally you feel Saraswati is inspiring. Why she is restraining? And then you realize why she is restraining. Apart from conserving things, speaking is you are letting things open to all. All the forces. That's why the mother says, don't brag. Occultism is inbuilt in the fabric of Indian life. So much so that now, of course, we use the word, we have lost all that knowledge. So it's superstition, this, that. And yes, many things have got mixed up. Many of the concepts which were not there within us have entered through another door, and this door, the color black. And this was a whole science which... So occultism is basically connected with life and will, wanting to master all the forces. So they went deeper and deeper, and this came from Tantra. How much ever we may condemn Tantra, and of course there are sides of it, but the Indian life, the Durga Puja, all these are all Kundalini and Tantric rituals, all of them, Shakt, they come from the Shakt cults, and of course Vaishnava cults, they were all laced with that Tantric element. So occultism, which was one of the doors, because they said, okay, loving the divine is okay, loving that ineffable, talking about him fine, but in real life, in practical life, how do I deal with it? But again, like both these aspects, this also had its limits. And the limit was, what does occultism do? It finds so many powers and aspects through which life, we have mantra for every deity. But what we do in the process, in Savitri we have wonderful description, goddess of the greater mind. By knowing too much, they missed the one thing to be known. And the transcendent kept her secrecy. So always occult and the spiritual. Occult could take us to the door, but it could never match the spiritual. Spiritual is the one. And we have the typical story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu is a great occultist. He has got boons. He can't die with this, can't die with that. Means modern science has already entered the domain of the occult. So all conditions, outer conditions, he has managed to conquer. He has asked God. He thought he is very smart. He has asked, I shouldn't die of this, that, everything, all things. So wonderful. What else is required? And he goes back comfortably. But both the brothers did this. Hiranyaksh, he dies of Vara. He thought, what will wild boar do to me? Of course, now immortalized in that, beautifully brought out in that movie, Kantara. Nice movie. So that's one. Okay. Then there comes this other, which is Narsingh Avatar. He could never imagine that there could be, that one can create endless. That's why even Rakt Bij, they are all, there is a dark occult and there is a bright occult. What was known in the West as white magic and black magic. Now, we don't have to believe in all this because we have the one. But this was the way human beings tried to open their doors. Black magic deals with malevolent forces and they can do a lot of things, but it's important to understand. So people are often drawn and they ask, sometimes somebody asked me, I know of a person is very powerful, he could bring sweets, whichever sweet store you tell him, he'll bring in a moment from there. If I remember right, it was Agrawal Sweets. If I remember right. No, it's a nice. So he could bring in a moment. You tell him and with this particular sweet and he would bring it. He's saying, how do they do it, Alokta? I don't know. My problem is different. I would rather say somebody powerful who can take away from me the craving of sweets. See, this is the difference. Occult is something where you master, and there are forces like that. Amazing force. A mother speaks about it. There were these 3 fellows who tried to throw stones at Sri Aurobindo. And they wanted a medium. And who could become a medium? Normally people with a very less intelligence and, they easily crude, they become very easily medium of such forces. That's why in India there was so much knowledge about Adhikar Bhed. Not everybody was taken into spiritual life. See what happened to Hirday. Sri Ramakrishna touched him and he lost his head. He was his nephew. There was so much, and that's why in yoga to pull people, because it's a tremendous power. So therefore one has to Be ready. Adhikar bhed. All this in occultism was there. You can't, if there is the slightest fear, once mother asked Pranabda when, they would come, by the time they would come to the room, it's 1:30. And Dada writes that by then I want to rest, but mother would tell him, you want to learn occultism? He says, Mother, is there a way you can just transmit it to me? But she asked him why? Because he had no fear even in the physical cells. Any fear and occultism is out. Because you are dealing with forces and energies. It's like in a nuclear installation. And yet, all occultism, and while it is so, the problem with occultism is power. But this very power can destroy. It's like we try to pick up the Gada of Bhim, or better, not Gandhi, but Dhanush, Shiv Dhanush. If you are not ready, that's why very few go into the true occultism, which is the white magic, because it requires great adhar. There is that passage in Savitri, book 7, canto 5, and Sri Aurobindo says, whose occult might no magic can imitate. When he speaks about the Kundalini Shakti. If the Adhar is not ready, it will break down. So black magic was the one people practiced. But how dangerous it could be. So this person asked somebody who became like one of the servant boys in the ashram. And wherever he went, he started manufacturing stones. So stones were falling. So the matter was reported to the mother. And the mother went into her inner worlds and she saw there were 3 vital beings who were doing this mischief through this man. So they came to her with folded hands. I am sorry, but we are under his command. So, but we don't mind. You tell us whatever you want, we'll do for you. So mother asked them, what can you do? They said, we can throw stones. Mother said, I don't need you. Problem is, it falls back very badly. So it fell back on the magician or the fakir, and he was on the deathbed. And we know the story doesn't end there. When he was on deathbed, his wife came running and pleaded, please save him. And the mother goes to Sri Aurobindo. One of the many touching stories, Sri Aurobindo's compassion and humility are 2 things which are amazing. Goes and tells Sri Aurobindo, she goes and says that, this is what has happened. Sri Aurobindo simply says, oh, what? Death for a few stones? And he recovers. What compassion. Death for a few stones? We thought even one verbal stone. This man spoke to me like that. When? 20 years back. Come on. Not for his sake, for your sake, release him from the heart, no. Poor fellow has advanced, evolved further, and you're holding it. Many quarrels I have seen in homes. Suddenly a whole barrage of pitara comes. You said this, that time, you have forgotten when. So, one day you sit and say everything and burn it. Don't keep reminding. So, these are also occult things, quarrel, all these, because they are forces. Mother says, they bring in the inconsequences of, they bring in the incoherences of fate. These goddess of the powers of the lower vital worlds. These train accidents, tragedy, all they get into people's head, give suggestions, make things go awry. So, this is a whole field. And yet, and that's what we see in Hiranyakaship's story, that Hiranyakaship asks for, he's a great occultist, he has mastered every possible force. Prahlad doesn't do all that. Prahlad simply says, Hari, 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 Hari. Wherever he goes, his Bua, aunt, Holika, malintention. Prahlad is a sweet little child, he is a symbol of the psychic being. Will you come with me? Yes, Bua, no problem. This fire, she dies, but Prahlad survives. They try so many things, and yet he survives. Why? Because he has got it right, the consciousness of the one. So this occultism cannot lead us to the one. It can lead us to the door where we have to surrender all these powers. If we have this illusion that these are my powers and I have these powers, one misses the real thing. Beautifully, Sri Aurobindo describes in one of his poems, Mahatmas. So as the poem goes, very interesting things Mother and Sri Aurobindo have revealed. One of that is that you may do Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga and all these practices, yet you may not be spiritual. No, I'll not touch upon that. So, he goes and he wants to Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas. He has come to him for the knowledge, but he knows that this man is not ready. He says, okay, what have you done? I have done Hatha Yoga. In 3 days I have perfected. What? Let Sri Aurobindo says, what men in Kali Yuga, the yoga of the old Lemurian kings. This is not Hatha Yoga what we practice. What we are practicing is some good exercises drawn from there. It's okay. It's good for the body and mind. Nothing wrong in doing exercises which are helpful. But Hatha Yoga of the old Lemurian kings, standing on one feet. This is what Hiranyakashipu, all these people did that Hatha Yoga. So, anyways, through the body they had opened a door. So this is how. So he says, no, it's not enough. I know you have done all this. Go and come back to me after some time. So he practices Raj Yoga. And he says, not this Raj Yoga that people practice now, but Raj Yoga of the Atlantic kings, which he again finishes in 3 days, has lot of powers. Raj Yoga gives lot of powers. Even Hatha Yoga gives Anima, Garima, Mahima, Lagima, Anima, all kinds of powers. Raj Yoga also gives Vyapti, Prakamya, many of the things. And then he comes and he is all shining locks and all very proud. Now you give me the ultimate knowledge. He says, find Krishna. So with all his occult knowledge, he tries to find Krishna and he can't find him. He goes to Yudhishthir's palaces, he can't find him. He goes to this place, Vrindavan, here, there, he can't find him. So he doesn't know what to do. So he's very distraught because Guru has put this condition. He says, all these occult knowledges, I can't find Krishna. And then he sees there is a madman jumping on the slopes of Himalayan slopes and he is delighted. And there he sees Krishna in him. As he goes near him, Sri Aurobindo says, this man kicks at him. And all his powers go away. And he is reduced to a child. And then he dances and says, here, beggar, take your gifts. He gives them. So see, this is something much beyond. Spirituality is always beyond occultism. All that is needed can come. In fact, it is the highest truth because all occult powers, gods, goddesses, they all come from there. So while gods and goddesses, this entire world of Shudra Devta and Ucha Devta and all these titans, which is the dark worlds, but all of them draw from the one. So spirituality is all about one, but till one advances there, all these have opened the doors. At least they have enlarged man's scope. That there is something higher, something greater. And like a ladder, zigzag of the gods, people have tried to climb. And the fourth door, which is the most direct, is spiritual experience and realization. So there comes what is really spiritual experience. So we all immediately have this conception. I'll suddenly see God, just like Arjuna saw God. Even Arjuna, with whom Shri Krishna has been together, he says that you don't know, for lives we have been together as Nar Narayan. So he says, but who are you? You are saying all this, I don't understand. Show yourself to me. He says, you can't see. But I'll give you as an act of special grace for a moment, and he can't bear it. It's not easy to see God. What we can see is something of his through one of the forms. Yes, all that is possible. But the divine in all his effulgence. People often ask that, if God is there everywhere, why doesn't he show him to us? So my simple thing is, 10 minutes stand outside, gaze at the sun, and I won't be responsible for what happens. Then talk about setting your eyes on a light before whose effulgence the sun appears as a darkness. That's how Yama tells Nachiketa, Na tatra surya bhati, kuto yamagni, na chandra tarka. So one cannot behold this. But now we come to that. There are many experiences. Sometimes it could be just a little peaceful feeling. We go to the ashram and feel some kind of presence. Somebody as if छुए कोई मुझे पर नजर ना आए. Okay, so somebody touched and I couldn't feel. Sometimes it can take strange forms, even through the so-called human forms. There have been experiences like that. You think it's a human relation. It is a human relation, but the divine enters through some door and suddenly touches and goes. So there are so many ways that the master, the beloved, the lover, the one, the infinite, the wonderful, he comes to us. We are going through things and there is a sudden difficulty and something happens and the chariot turns in another direction. So spiritual conscious experiences are not just, in fact, if one were to write about spiritual experiences, it would literally be that endless. And I do believe that especially those who are marked for spiritual life, they do have some kind of an contact which translates itself into some kind of experience. That experience could be something like a strange urge, strong urge, pull towards a particular form, pull towards a particular, maybe a reading or a path or any, it can take any form. Or suddenly, I have seen people who come to Pondicherry repeatedly and I ask them, I'm sure it must be here also, why do you go? They say, अच्छा लगता है. You ask them, अच्छा लगता है means, how do you define that अच्छा लगता है? I feel nice. It can take plenty of forms. But there again, there are some more direct and some which are indirect from behind the veil of secrecy. And then there are some really great ones, out of which the one experience where we see Sri Aurobindo's starting point. The Gita speaks about it, that rare is he who beholds me in samagram mam, in all my totality and completeness. People had spiritual experiences, great saints and sages. Some on peaks of trance, they had the bliss of the ineffable. Some that vast impersonal peace that surpasses all understanding. Some experience the doors of knowledge open and rivers come pouring down. Ila, Mahi, Saraswati, Bharati, all this. So people had different experiences. A power supporting their life, vibhuti, genius, all these are different grades of spiritual experiences. But again, there we see that we can stop there. And that's why it's important to understand these are early glimpses. One of the most beautiful, you see something beautiful about Sri Aurobindo, which we all want to remain young, I'm sure. No cream can make us young, that's for sure. It will keep the people who are manufacturing them young. Young or old, I don't know, but they will build nice houses, giving you the illusion of fair and lovely. First of all, I don't know this racist cream. Why fair is lovely? We have Shyama Sundar. So, anyways, that's a different story. But point is that if we want to remain young, we should always look towards the future. Why? Because these are the three characteristics. Child is always full of wonder. Child means always we should have a little child within us. What is that child thing within us? Always not satisfied with any number of explanations. Oh, I have read this book, this is how things are. Sometimes I have asked people, what do we really know? People say, this world is like this like this like that. I say, are you so very sure? Go to the depth. You will see you don't know. There comes a point you don't know. That's when we are ready for knowledge. Child is always full of wonder. For him, life is full of wonder. Because he doesn't know. We form presumptions. Very soon we just fix things as if we know it all. There's a nice limerick on it. Someone says, my name is Benjamin Jovit. I am a graduate from Balliol College. All that is knowledge, I know it. What I do not know is not knowledge. What presumption today, somebody had sent on WhatsApp. I had once a long discussion with a devotee of Richard Dawkins. So, a avowed atheist. And he is converted suddenly to hardcore Catholicism, this latest news. So, what do we know? What's going to happen tomorrow? We believe that we know. So, this child is there who is always wanting to learn. And the youth is there always wanting to try new things, not be satisfied with any experience, however great. Even if one had the vision of God, what next? That's what we see in Sri Aurobindo. His starting point is Vasudevam Sarvamiti. Somebody else would have said, okay, wow, now all the malas that are going everywhere, I will sit on a dais, the crudest, vulgarest conception of God, sorry to say, sitting on, and all the malas going there. It's so gaudy, no? I don't know. Look at Sri Aurobindo giving darshan. Sri Aurobindo and the mother sitting on a sofa. If you look at that sofa, actually it is fairly small with till date, same. But it was not the malas and all this, but looking at him it was difficult to behold. That was darshan. So that all these adulations, nothing, always. So Sri Aurobindo, after all those realizations, he says, no, there is something more to do. And what does he say? All these spiritual experiences and realization, he writes a letter to Barin, his brother. He says, sir, what are you doing there? Why don't you tie your bundles like everybody else? Because he had not even taken a single disciple. So he says, I am not in a hurry. Let others tie their bundles. I am not in a hurry to tie my bundle. I have done my share of man making. Now I want to do divine man making. Sir, do it now. He says, no. Up till now, he writes in a letter, all that the average Vedantin has touched is nothing but the helm of the transcendent. A hurried glimpse into the unknown. All that an average devotee has experienced is nothing but a little spilth from the nectar of the rain of gods. That's all. And it has maddened him. That's not what I want. I don't want to make another emotional fervor and, big philosophy like that. This is all that is done. Now I am into another pursuit. When he speaks about supermind, he says, 10 years I am able to rise into the last of the three layers of the supermind. Just imagine looking forward toward the future. How the mother, he had all the experience. Now in the cells, all the cells must experience it. What patience, perseverance, and for every one of us. So even spiritual realizations and experiences they are the most direct entry, no doubt about it. They leave a stamp, but they don't change. Sri Aurobindo says something very interesting. Spiritual experiences leave a stamp. A beautiful stamp. But they don't change us. Realizations, yes, realization is the next level. Realization is when an experience gets established. I have feeling of peace. It's an experience. When peace is established, it cannot be shaken even on the battlefield, then it's a realization. But even that is not adequate. So how Sri Aurobindo keeps moving? All these, when we look back, he says, are preparations. That is the beauty of Sri Aurobindo. So what's going to come? What is left undone? And there he comes out after all this, that he says very beautifully in one of his letters, that I do not consider the history, the spiritual history of India as a book that has been written and finished. There are more things which are to come. And that's where we started changing of this robe. We all know the divine is inside. At least we believe in it. But we don't see. Why? We all know that he is inside. But look at this temple. Often people are taught to meditate upon the body as a dead corpse and, full of vishta and is so horrible. But this is a temple. It should become clean. It should become beautiful, worthy temple. That which is inside must show up through this temple. That's how we see Sri Aurobindo and the mother. It was so difficult to behold them. People had such experiences. Even Champak Lalji, and I don't know, I asked him, how do you travel? Then they said, they samvaran kar lete hain apne andar. But there were times when his body would, as if it's light, radiating. If the body is not there, just something luminous which is coming out. So this body itself must change. Mind must change. It must be it's not enough, because what we are, when we talk about spiritual experience realization, they are in a deeper ground of being. That's why yogis who have it somewhere in Himalayas, I don't know why everybody goes to Himalayas. After the Gita, Himalayas should become defunct, because we already have a path in the battlefield. But anyways, it's one's choice. And then one comes, Guruji, Himalaya gaye the. That's, I've always felt that is unfitness. Because if one has gone to Himalayas and realized, I want to learn, I can't go to Himalayas, I want to learn how to have this while I'm dealing with everyday life, with all its ups and downs and turbulences. So somebody who has realized it, somebody who says, well, I led a normal life, a regular life, I'm a regular guy, and yet went through. And that is the path that Sri Aurobindo and the mother tell us. In the smallest details of life, the divine must flow. It's not enough that in that religious fervor, in the temple, while adoring the Murti, we say Shivoham, Shivoham, that's the truth. But also when we are face to face with Andhakasur and Jalandhar, we should be able to say Shivoham, Shivoham, Satchidanandoham. It's not enough that we read all the books, but whatever we speak should become a Veda. What is Veda? Veda is the soul vision expressing through speech. Highest intensity of speech that human beings are capable of is the mantra. It is not enough that we learn all the elaborate spiritual occult practices through which we manage and control this force and that force. But rather we surrender everything at the feet of the divine and let him manage all the forces that come our way, like Arjuna. It is not enough to have this experience and that experience, this realization and that realization. But not to rest till every, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, and with that we can stop and have questions, as the Buddha turns from the threshold of realization and says, no, till a single soul is struggling with suffering, my realization is not complete. The highest spiritual experience till now was moksha. And there is so much talk about moksha. But don't we see it's ultimately, if it is an end, if it is needed as it's a stage. Moksha in the sense freedom from ignorance. When we know that I am not this mind, body, life, not this little personality, not my biodata, not my, what is that called, visiting card. Then, but what I am, who I am, when we know it, now that is the moksha, because I am freed from that fundamental ignorance. In that sense, yes. But where we see doctrines of moksha, this was not so in ancient India. This became much later as something very prominent. And moksha took this idea, not as freedom like Janak and Krishna and Bhishma, but it took that form of otherworldliness. Then we missed the point. And moksha as an end point where my personal being or soul merges with the divine and is done with suffering and pain. How selfish, one would say. While countless souls are struggling and suffering, and this world remains still held in the hollow of the hands of Rudra. Rudra is still okay. But the Asura and the Rakshasa and the Pishacha hold it. So as long as that is there, how can one individual moksha? That's why Sri Aurobindo says, it's not enough to discover the God within, but also to discover him in his universality. In the entire cosmos, the working, and participate, play one's own role. And then beyond the cosmos, in his transcendent being, as he says, I manifest. It's the right answer to Descartes. I manifest, therefore I am. And because I transcend the cosmos and the manifestation, therefore I am. So this is the long journey. All this was preparation. These are the doors. Individually, they take the form of through the mind, Jnana Yoga, through the heart, Bhakti Yoga, through life and its forces, Karma Yoga. Even the body must engage in yoga, which is something new. Hatha Yoga is not yoga, supramental yoga. Hatha Yoga was to superimpose upon the physical working, the working of a higher quality vital energy. That's why, it's combined with pranayam, which can prolong life, give us health, but that is by no stretch of imagination the supramental transformation. Some people try to, Hatha Yoga cannot lead us to supramental transformation. But even the body must remember God and must taste immortality. I think I will stop here. I already stressed, but any questions, I'll be very happy. Yes, please.
Shankaracharya told this world is an illusion, but he went round from south to north 3-4 times and started establishing mutts.
Yes.
And he moved telling that his world is illusion.
Yes.
At the same time told the world is very real. It's not illusion. But he was there in the room itself. He didn't left the room. For quite a long time he stayed there only.
Yes. So, of course, there is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo on this. But I'll not talk about that aphorism. It's about God laughed thrice. So, but that apart. So, and I am not sure whether people understood Shankara, what he really said. But yes, that's how it is, that the world is an illusion. Now, Sri Aurobindo, and the difference between the illusionist Advaita and Sri Aurobindo used the word realistic Advaita for his own doctrine. The illusionist Advaita is where one regards this world as fundamentally a non-existent reality, which is a non-starter. Whereas Sri Aurobindo says it's an illusion in the sense it's a distortion of the real. And therefore it can be corrected. So here it's an illusion because we are wearing the wrong glasses. And if you change the right glasses, then you will see the world in its true reality, and then even the surface one can work to change it. This is one reason. Second is, in the entire spiritual history of mankind, there are very few instances, from whatever I have read, most of it, some rishis, for instance, Rishi Agastya, Vasisth, to name a couple of them. Subsequently, Sri Krishna. I'm leaping across many glimpses here and there, and of course Sri Aurobindo, where the individual realization was joined by the universal. So it's only when you become one in the cosmic consciousness that you can stay in a room and change and work up on the world. And obviously Sri Aurobindo had way back universalized his consciousness, because he had already the experience of Vasudevam Sarvamiti, which Shri Krishna says is very rare, but that's why he could be on the battleground as the Sarathi, but it didn't make a difference. He could act upon the entire I don't know, they are rarest of rare. What comes very with clarity is Shri Krishna and Sri Aurobindo. And if I read, or rather read between the lines in the stories, some of the stories of Rishi Agastya, because he drank the whole sea, which is the waters of cosmic waters, and Vasisth Rishi, whose story Sri Aurobindo writes about, So they were aware, and they to an extent did act upon the cosmic consciousness while being in one place. But very rare, and obviously Shankaracharya was far from that. Having said that, I must say, because people get into this conflict, Shankaracharya, Buddha, all of them in their own time, in their own right, at their own place were right within their limitation. Because that was an age when to speak about, even to dream of transformation was impossible. People were drenched into, killing and plundering, building empires and this, that. So he had to see, always asceticism comes to correct an excess of rajas. So asceticism comes as even in individual life. But if you make it the way of life, his mistake was that he generalized it. That was the error. As an individual, it's perfectly fine. For a few faithful, it's perfectly fine. But when you make moksha of that kind and sannyasa, like non-violence, the ideal of a race, you impoverish it. And that, I think, was the bigger error. And more than him, people adopted even now. They still, I often say that at least now, minimum we should speak about the Gita and the ideal of Shri Krishna. That's the minimum that will save us from many errors. And some people take a great offense, but once I said that Rashtrapita is not Gandhi. He is a great leader or whatever, it doesn't matter where his name is. Okay, among the many, Rashtrapita, if any, is Rama, Krishna and Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo he created the new India, gave birth. And because what is birth? Conception. So whose conception of India comes closest to what Aryavarta is? So you see very clearly, it is Rama at the origin, Shri Krishna, who really established Aryavarta. Before that, there is Jambudvip. And Sri Aurobindo, who gave to this Aryavarta once again a soul and a new body which is going to last forever. So, but yes, those who want to believe in Shankaracharya, it's perfectly fine. That's a different story. But yes, it's a paradox that even the story about going back to his mother when she because he had promised her that, I will come. That's how he took sannyas, compelled her that, you tell me that to take the sannyas, then this crocodile, anyways, I'm going to die. So all those stories are very interesting. Also the Ubhay Bharati episode, part of the history. But what is going to come is going to be much, much better. So we should look toward the future. They were great steps, as I said, spiritual experiences, realization, wonderful. But let's not be stuck there. Let's move toward the future. That's the beauty of Sri Aurobindo. Something much more complete, integral, and that's the wonder of wonders.